Hello, class. Thank you very much for joining today. I'm very excited to present to you our new topic for the system analysis and design. We will be continuing our lesson about Agile, more particularly focusing on the implementation we call as Scrum. But before that, I would like to remind everyone to submit your assignment and ensure that your inside paper is uploaded in our class Google Drive. The deadline of submission is on August 23, 2021, and kindly coordinate to me as your instructor if there are any concerns. So the expectation is at least at the end of this day, you will be able to pass all your papers. All right? Any questions on our assignment? Okay. Now let's go first to our usual terminology recap. We have been learning a lot about Agile and how companies are implementing this kind of implementation and framework to their software development process. And each of the lessons that we have, we've been focusing on some of the important events that is being conducted specifically for this process. The last time that we discussed about an event, it's called the daily stand-up. The daily stand-up is a maximum of 15-minute meeting across different members of the Scrum team, wherein they literally are standing together and discussing about what went well and what they have done, what they are currently doing, and if there are any impediments. Now, these three questions are very important because in Agile, transparency is very important. And then you will be able to know about the status of your members' tasks, or even some impediments that probably you can help or contribute with. And at the same time, you can help learning from this specific impediment. In fact, companies who are implementing Agile appreciates this event more because it's not just a status update, but it's more of really aligning the team and ensuring that everyone is on the same page. So don't forget about this terminology, the daily stand-up. And usually this happens within the sprint. And we discuss about sprint as a time-boxed event or schedule wherein you as a team focus on this time-boxed schedule on delivering or processing a feature that you would like to deliver towards the end into production. All right? Any questions on the daily stand-up? Perfect. Now, I will be showcasing to you a video that was actually developed and done by Atlassian, which is one of the companies that provides really great tools for teams who are implementing Scrum. In fact, the presentation or the video itself is actually a representation of the wrong things on doing Agile. And one of the features that they actually posted there is all about retrospective. But then what is this retrospective? Let's listen first to this video, and I will be asking your comments regarding the video.
Chet Wrong here with the wrong way to do Agile. Today, retrospectives. A good way to start your retrospective is to identify the scapegoat. Somebody hasn't been pulling their weight, and by identifying the weakest link, you make the other team members feel better about themselves. Remember, a retrospective is not a dialogue, it is a monologue. So sit back and listen while the loudest team member tells you what went wrong.
Hey, what's going on? You guys are mouthful. Don't worry, I'll talk slowly. Oh, am I right? Am I right? But really, what's the deal with the design team? I mean, come on. Am I right? Am I right?
Take detailed notes of all the items discussed and make clear action items for future sprints. Then destroy this document to ensure that nobody ever learns from it. After all, it is only a team-building exercise and should not be taken seriously. And that's the wrong way to do retrospectives.
right. So in order for us to fully understand the video itself, I just would like to give you a caveat that don't take this seriously because this is actually the wrong way of doing agile. More specifically, talking about retrospective. Now, while watching the video itself, what are the different activities that you can see from the video? Anyone? Oh, I heard about discussion. Yes, that's correct. When you do retrospective, there is a form of a discussion and people are communicating, right? Who else has an answer? Hmm? Correct. There is a form of documentation wherein whatever is being discussed in this specific event, they are put into a document. And this document has to be kept and to be reviewed the next time you do your retrospective. Anyone else? Sure. They are answering questions. And these questions we're going to learn as we go along with our discussion today. All right? Okay. Now, what is a sprint retrospective? If you can remember from our initial discussion about Agile, there are different values that we tackled upon. And one of them is what we called transparency. And when we're talking about transparency, it is the ability of a member of a team opening up and giving updates as clear as possible to everyone. And at the same time, raising the flag if there are some issues that they encountered along the way while they're doing the development. In the real world scenario, retrospective is a very important activity, not just within the Scrum team, but even to the management itself. It is in this activity wherein teams get together and discuss about what happened in a sprint in terms of different aspects to which we're going to discuss later. And then towards the end, they will be able to do something like what they call an action plan. Now, when we define retrospective, it is an event where the Scrum team inspects how the last sprint went with regards to individuals, interactions, processes, tools, and their definition of done. If you can remember, we define definition of done as an agreement across different members in order to define that a specific task is already done. Now, in the sprint retrospective, this is the time wherein teams are focused on identifying what happened in the sprint, focusing on these different aspects. But the question is, how will they be able to know and also document what actually happened in a sprint? In order to guide a good conversation in a sprint retrospective, there is what we call 3 basic questions that members of the Scrum team should be able to answer. The first one, what worked or went well in the sprint? I think this first question is the more positive side, right? What happened in the sprint that actually went well, that helped us deliver what we have committed in the sprint? On the other hand, number 2, what caused problems, failed to work properly, or did not go well? Meaning, these are the items that doesn't really go that well and in fact also resulted into a negative effect. And number 3, this is more of an innovative side of the retrospective. What can be done differently in the next sprint to improve the process and overcome the problems occurring previously? In short, this is what we can try. Usually a retrospective lasts from 30 minutes up until the maximum of 2 hours, depending on the topics discussed and the conversation within the meeting itself. However, all of these conversations are revolving on these 3 basic questions. What normally happens is Scrum team prepares a board wherein it is subdivided by different columns, And each of the member prepares a card and write there the answers they have for these three basic questions. Post it on the board, and then the Scrum Master will now be facilitating and opening up the discussion on the retrospective itself. Sometimes it's also the teammate who does the discussion or facilitation of this event, but it depends now on how your team is structured. So as you can see here, some of the examples, for example, of the what went well is, for instance, great collaboration with the marketing team, which is something that they can continue on doing. What went less well, for example, final release delayed, which is something that they can discuss what happens and what can be improved on. Please do note that this is not a blaming game. We are not blaming people because of failure, but we are actually becoming more transparent and owning whatever it is currently that didn't went well and discuss as a team what they can do differently next time. And the number three is what do they want to try next? Like, for example, invite marketing to sprint review so that at least the marketing team has something to work on. Some teams are becoming more creative. They are adding additional columns such as this. What puzzles us? Like, for example, there are some topics that they are not aware on how will they do it. Apparently, at the end of the day, the more you get input from your team, the more that the team understands how they work, what actually is working in a team, what is not working, and what they can try. Now, according to some statistics and based on industry experience, if a Scrum team does retrospective 100% in one way or the other, it's not, automatically that people become transparent and adaptive to it, but 100% towards the end, retrospective gives a real good value for the team. Now, while they are also discussing about the three basic questions, the action items are also being formulated. If, for instance, they're discussing about what didn't went well, what can they do better, right? And put some action items, assign it to someone, and then do the follow-up as you go along with the next sprint. And then you can revisit these action items, which are actually a list of items that needs to be done in relation to the retrospective. You can review this and see whether or not the team was able to accomplish or at least do the action items you identified during the retrospective. Now, what are the benefits of retrospective? Although there are a lot of benefits which we actually discussed already, but this one is apparently the most evident. The first one is identify and resolve problem areas. By identifying what are those items that didn't went well, you will be able to identify what areas needs to focus on. Who are the people you needed in order to address this? And if there are some items that needs to be escalated even to the management team. Help improve processes. This is also important because when you are implementing something mostly in Agile, we say that it's more on flexibility and agility, right? You are not just relying on one single process, but you can actually adapt and change it if it makes sense to your team. And through retrospective, you'll be able to review this and see whether or not the process that you agreed upon before actually works now, and what are the changes needed to be done. Next is ownership of the whole project. When teams are actually explaining and sharing their thoughts in retrospective, they are owners already of the whole project. They own, there is a responsibility that they will be able to finish whatever is there in their project. And last but not the least, transparency and trust, which I think the most important part here is the trust, right? And it's good that you work on a project or in a company where you are being trusted. Eventually, you will become, for instance, a software engineer or a part of the project management, or maybe a CEO of a company soon. That is a huge possibility. And it is important that you trust your people because when they feel that they are being trusted, they are able to do more than what you are expected for, and they are expected for. And one way in order for you to foster this trust and to build this trust is through the retrospective. Now, I would like you to think for a couple of moments or a couple of minutes. How do you think retrospective be able to apply in your personal life? As an individual, as a student, how will you be able to rekindle and get feedback, and if not, review yourself and see where you can improve on what worked, what went well, what didn't went well, and what you can try. In fact, this is not just for software development process. You can also do this in your personal life or even through the people that you engage with in an everyday basis. Now, this insight will be your next insight paper assignment. I would like you to ponder on this question. How will you apply retrospective in your personal life? Because at the end of the day, we grow when we get feedback. We grow when there are opportunities for us to improve ourselves. We become mature if we listen and understand our limitations. And we become a better person if we adapt and become more flexible and trusting ourselves that we will be able to do it. Do you have any questions? All right, so that is our lesson for today. And I will be expecting for your assignments to be passed next meeting. Don't forget about the last insight paper and the discussion for today. By the way, some of the schedules, probably in the next 2 weeks, we will be having already our unit exam. Just make sure that you also prepare for this in advance. All the materials are in our Google Drive. You can just download it. If you are having difficulty connecting to the Google Drive, just let me know so that I can assist you. However, we can make use also of our consultation time if in case that you have more questions in today's topic. All right. Once again, thank you very much, class, and we'll see you again in our next meeting. Goodbye.